Work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. 91. Kayla is a new RBT who has never worked in the field before. She is put on a case as part of her training. The client on the case engages in severe self-injury when their iPad is removed from sight. Kayla attempts to leave the iPad in the same room that she and the client work in at all times and will move to the room where the iPad is located if self-injury starts. Kayla's behavior is potentially reinforced by what? Be very careful here. This is a long question, and there are multiple behaviors going on in the question. Where do we start? What is the question asking? The question is asking about Kayla's behavior, not necessarily the client's behavior. Okay, so we're trying to focus on Kayla's behavior. So what is Kayla doing? What is our question? What is happening in the question, right? That's what we ask ourselves. What is happening? Well, Kayla is always trying to leave the iPad in the same room. And if self-injury starts, Kayla will move immediately to where the iPad is located. And why will she do that? Because the client, right, engages in severe self-injury when the iPad is removed from sight. What is Kayla trying to do? She's trying to prevent what? Self-injury by keeping the iPad in sight. So if we're focused on Kayla's behavior, why is Kayla continually leaving the iPad in the same room and trying to get to the room where the iPad is located? Is it A, the extinction of the client's self-injurious behavior? Is Kayla putting the behavior on extinction? No, she's not, right? The behavior is on the opposite of extinction. Every time this client engages in self-injury, Kayla reinforces it by putting the iPad in sight. B, negative reinforcement. What's another way to think about negative reinforcement? Escape. What is Kayla trying to do? She's trying to escape the self-injury. If Kayla brings the client to the iPad and the self-injury stops, the behavior has been removed. In the future, what's Kayla going to do? Continue bringing the client to the iPad. Kayla is being potentially reinforced by negative reinforcement. As BCBAs, we need to be very aware of this effect from both RBTs and parents. Removing that problem behavior, okay, can be very reinforcing for RBTs and for parents. B looks like our answer. What about C? Is this positive reinforcement? Well, no, because the behavior is stopping, it's being removed, so it is not positive. And then D, Kayla's behavior is being punished. If it was being punished, it would be stopping or ceasing or reducing, but instead it is increasing or maintaining. So Kayla's behavior is being reinforced. So what is our answer? It's going to be B. Kayla is trying to escape. Kayla is being reinforced by negative reinforcement. 92. Behavior analysts who are in charge of or supervise behavior technicians are responsible for which of the following items? All right. As a behavior analyst, as a BCBA, there's a very good chance you will be providing supervision for technicians. What kind of duties does that entail? What is your responsibility as a supervisor of technicians? Are you responsible for soliciting feedback from supervisees? Absolutely. We should be giving feedback constantly, but how are we going to know how we're doing unless we get feedback from our technicians? The BCBA, BACB task list, the ethical code, they want us soliciting feedback from supervisees. They want us being evaluated just like we evaluate our supervisors. So A, you are responsible for that. Are we just going to pick A and move on? No, we're going to read all of our answer choices, see if we can find a better answer. B, ongoing training and assessment. Absolutely, that's a no-brainer. That's part of your job, not only technician training, but parent training. A lot of your job is going to be training. Ongoing training, ongoing assessment. A and B look good. C, the actions of their supervisees. This is an underrated one. If you are supervising somebody, or if they're under your name, under the board website, right? So you've got your supervisees under your name, you're responsible for them, which is why supervision is so important. Whatever they're doing, even when you're not there, you're still responsible for them. So to answer the question, which of the following items are you responsible for? As a supervisor of behavior technicians, you solicit feedback, you conduct ongoing training and assessment, and you're responsible for the actions of your supervisees. So our answer is going to be D, all the above. 93. James is capable of typing over 100 words per minute. He shows off his speed to all his friends in the computer lab. When the girl he has a crush on walks in, his rate of typing decreases significantly. What is potentially occurring? Okay, so James, master typer, right? What is happening? He's a master typer, 100 words per minute. All of a sudden, the girl he likes walks in and he starts typing very slow. What is happening? Is James experiencing negative reinforcement? Well, what is happening to his behavior? Well, it's decreasing. So is it reinforcement? No, right? His behavior is not increasing. It's definitely not maintaining. There's no reinforcement going on here, negative or positive, right? So what about reactivity? Reactivity, when behavior changes, you act different in the presence of somebody else. Typically, we associate reactivity with clients when they're in the presence of a certain person, or technicians in the presence of a supervisor. But same thing here, right? James is just reacting to his girl, the girl he has a crush on walking in. His behavior changes. James is experiencing reactivity. It's not response blocking. Nobody's blocking James from typing, right? He's simply reacting. So what is potentially occurring? C, reactivity. 94. After 3 years of service, your client has finally achieved all their goals that were originally set during the initial assessment. You conduct a final indirect assessment and determine there are no longer any skills that you can work on as a behavior analyst. What should be your next step? What is happening in this question? Every time, ask yourself, what is happening? Well, you're a behavior analyst. You've provided 3 years of service. You've done your job. You've achieved your goals. There's nothing else you can work on. What is the question asking? What do we do next? This is sometimes a hard time in an analyst career, right? If you've been with a family a while, you get very close with them, and you don't always necessarily feel ready to let them go, even if it's the right thing to do. Okay. I recently had to discharge a client because we'd done all we could do. He was in a good place. We really loved the family, but we just could no longer proceed. Now, so all that said, what is going to be your next step thinking about 94? A, terminate services immediately. There is nothing left to work on. By now, hopefully, you know we don't terminate services immediately in this case. We never abandon clients. A is out. B, keep assessing until you find something that you can target. The parent wants to continue services. This is a common mistake we make. Okay. We just over-assess and we create problems when there are none. Don't do that. Okay. If there's nothing else socially valid to address, we need to move on. So C, transition your client out of services. So far, C, as simple as it is the best solution. What about D? Transition your client out of services only if the parent is willing to get rid of services. Unfortunately, a lot of parents come to really rely on us, right? And they're not necessarily going to be eager to get rid of us. It is your ethical responsibility as a BCBA, okay, in this scenario, to start the transition, even if the parents aren't willing. Okay, we can't just start creating goals out of nowhere. If you've done your assessments, there are no longer anything you can work on, we must start the transition process. 95, a data-driven approach is used at McKinley Law Firm when determining how many hours should be dedicated to a single client. What type of analysis is most likely conducted? Okay, what is happening in the question? We are determining how many hours we are dedicating to a single client. That key of how many hours, okay, should be our giveaway. We're looking for the analysis we're conducting. Think about comparative analysis. Think about parametric analysis. Okay, think about task analysis, component analysis. Which one is going to start to determine something like how many hours? Okay, because are we choosing between different interventions? No, we're looking at quote unquote a dosage, an amount. And when we look at a dosage or an amount, what are we looking at? Is it a component analysis? No, right? We just said we're not looking between a package of interventions and what is and isn't working. Okay. We're looking at simply how many hours we need to dedicate to a single client to get the best results. So if we look at B, a multiple baseline design. Multiple baseline design really doesn't have anything to do with this question. Should not even be on your radar. A, C, parametric analysis. What are we doing with the parametric analysis? Well, we're looking at an intervention and we're looking at the amount of intervention. So it's the quote unquote, the dosage, right? Should we dedicate 10 hours to the client? Should we dedicate 20 hours? What is going to be the best? C looks like our answer. D, task analysis. We are not conducting a task analysis. We do not need a task chain. Simply, how many hours should be dedicated to a single client? We are going to conduct a C, a parametric analysis. 96. Use the table below. Find the trial by trial inter-observer agreement. Inter-observer agreement, right? We're trying to see two or more people taking data. Does that data match up? Now, there are different types of IOA, okay, that you need to be familiar with. Trial by trial is pretty easy. With trial by trial IOA, we're simply going to each trial and asking ourselves, is the data equivalent? Is the data equal? Is the data the same? If it is, okay, we have trial by trial IOA, and we simply find the percentage of trials that match. So interval 1, no response, no response. Yes, trial by trial IOA. Interval 2, no response, no response. Yes. Interval 3, response, response. Yes. Interval 4, no response, no response. Okay, what is our trial by trial IOA? Well, every trial matches the other trial. So we have 100%. That would be a very strong trial by trial IOA. Okay, 98. A BCBAD is teaching a behavior change class that is part of a BCBA course sequence. The BCBAD stresses to his students that replacement behaviors are essential to any good behavior reduction plan. What is the BCBAD emphasizing? What is happening in the question? BCBAD is teaching behavior change. The BCBAD is telling his students that replacement behaviors are essential to any good behavior reduction plan. So the focus here is what? The replacement behaviors. So what is the BCBAD emphasizing? It's emphasizing replacement behaviors. So now let's find out what can we possibly look for in our answer choices, right? Sometimes you can predict question or answers, right? And when you get to through the question, it's really not clear yet, okay? And you have to go to the answer choices. But even then, you've done all your work up front. We know we're looking for something about replacement behaviors. And look at that. If we look at A, the fair pair rule, what does the fair pair rule state? It states if we're going to reduce or take away a functional behavior, we need to replace that behavior with a functionally equivalent behavior. That's a replacement behavior, right? The BCBAD is emphasizing A, the fair pair rule, okay? So even though we maybe couldn't have predicted that, because we did our work up front, once we get to our answer choices, A becomes very obvious. B, avoiding the use of punishment. We don't talk about punishment at all in this question. C, topographically similar behaviors. Topographically similar behaviors. We're talking about replacement behaviors, and replacement behaviors need to be functionally equivalent, okay? Topography is not as important. And then D, unethical behavior change, intervention strategies. Replacement behaviors are as ethical as it gets. You need to be teaching replacement behaviors, okay? So what is the BCBAD emphasizing? They are emphasizing the replacement behaviors. They are emphasizing the fair pair rule. 99, during preliminary assessments, which of the following usually occurs? Okay, what is a preliminary assessment? Well, it's an assessment before our treatment starts, before we begin intervention, before we take on a client, right? It's before everything occurs, okay? So what are we typically doing, okay? We're reviewing records. We're doing interviews, okay? We're just gathering information. We're not even necessarily observing the client yet, right? We're really just getting basic indirect data to give us an idea of what we're looking at, okay? So which of the following usually occurs? A, interviews with the client and stakeholders. Yeah, absolutely, okay? That's what a preliminary assessment should be. Record review, indirect interviews, talk to the client stakeholders, just get a generalized sense of what is happening. What about B, interviews with the client and client stakeholders, as well as narrative ABC data collection? Now, preliminary assessments are going to come before these direct observations, right? So we're not quite where we need to be yet for a narrative ABC data collection. A narrative ABC data collection, that means we're already, deep within our functional behavior assessment. Now we're just collecting an initial preliminary assessment. We're really just looking for this indirect data. C is definitely out then. Manipulation of antecedents and consequences in the future teaching environment. We're not manipulating anything yet, okay? Very indirect, very casual. And then D, visual analysis of data related to the client's targets behaviors. Well, we don't have any data yet. Now, you could possibly say, what if the prior records has data, okay? But that's not as good of an answer as A, okay? Hypotheticals aren't going to do you a lot of good on the exam, right? A is just a solid answer, okay? Visual analysis of data implies we have a lot of data. Well, we're doing a preliminary assessment. We might not have very little data, if any at all, right? So which of the following usually occurs during a preliminary assessment? We're typically doing indirect interviews, record review with the client stakeholders. And then 100, Jade requests parent training for an extinction procedure her son's BCBA wants to implement. After training, Jade says she is ready to implement the procedure. Jade is able to follow through for 2 weeks, but will forget to implement extinction 10 to 15% of the time the behavior occurs. Is this acceptable? All right. What is occurring in the question? What is happening? Jade gets parent training for extinction. After training, Jade tries to implement the procedure. Jade follows through for 2 weeks, but then forgets to implement extinction 10 to 15% of the time. What's the problem with that? Well, how often does extinction need to be implemented? 100% of the time, or as close to 100% as possible. 85% just is not good enough for extinction. That means 15% of the time, that behavior is being reinforced. You're just building new reinforcement schedules over and over, okay? So is this acceptable? No, right? So A, yes, as long as extinction happens most of the time, it is okay. No, we really need to have it happen all the time. Nobody's perfect. Once, maybe twice, but extinction has to happen all the time. B, yes, you want extinction to occur at least 80% of the time. You want extinction to occur as close to 100% as possible. C, no, Jade should have never started the extinction procedure. Not necessarily. Jade was trained. She thought she was ready. Turns out she wasn't. It happens. D, no, extinction should happen every time the target response occurs. Yes, this is our best answer.